It's very nice to see everyone here today, this afternoon, on this beautiful day. We're excited to see you for this event. And without further ado, we just have just a few things to go over and some thank yous. I would like to acknowledge my staff, the first floor, for their support, our AV equipment and team and communications team, David Quick, our adult services coordinator, and the DC Public Library Foundation. This event is also made possible through partnership with Bold Fork Books. Special thanks to Liz Hoddle and Bold Fork, that's a mouthful. Bold Fork book owner Clementine Thomas for their cool ideas and hard work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Clementine Thomas.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Happy Saturday. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to an afternoon with Eric Kim in celebration of his new book, Korean American. My name is Clementine Thomas, and I own Bold Fork Books. We're DC's only dedicated cookbook store, and we're located up in Mount Pleasant. In addition to providing our city's cooks, eaters, and readers with a diverse array of cookbooks, food writing, kitchen tools, vintage cookbooks, and much, much more, we're also thrilled to host events like this, connecting our thriving and passionate local community with extraordinary writers like Eric, who are exploring food in all of its joy and all of its complexity. A huge, huge thank you to the DC Public Library Foundation and to the team here at MLK for partnering with us on this event. It is beyond an honor to be in this beautiful new space with all of you today. I do want to plug a couple more events we have coming up on our shop calendar. Next Saturday, April 30th, is Independent Bookstore Day. Independent bookstores. And we'll be celebrating with a store-wide sale and ice cream scoops from our friends at Happy Ice Cream. And on Friday, May 6th, we're hosting a Cookies and Fizz happy hour at the shop with the authors of the wonderful new book, Fabulous Modern Cookies. So you can find out about these events and much, much more on our website, boldforkbooks.com, or give us a follow at Bold Fork Books. So just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before I hand things over. We'll begin with Eric and Tanya's conversation, and then we'll end with a Q&A, so there'll be time for your questions, and we'll be coming around with mics for that. After the event, please stay seated if you're staying for the meet and greet with Eric. Those who want and have to leave will do so, and then we'll start calling folks up in groups. We will not be doing selfies or post photos with Eric, just to be mindful of time. That said, if you want to take photos during the event, you are more than welcome to. Just be sure to tag the library, to tag Bold Fork, and of course, Eric and Tanya. And lastly, just a reminder that we'll have copies of Korean American available for sale after the event. So now for the fun part. We are beyond lucky to be joined today by Eric Kim. His recipes, his videos, and his intimate, playful storytelling have helped so many of us through the last couple of years. Eric is a New York Times staff food writer, and prior to joining the New York Times, Eric was a digital manager at the Food Network, a contributing editor at Saveur, and a senior editor at Food 52, where he wrote the beloved Table for One column. Korean American is Eric's first book. Eric is joined in conversation today by Tanya Syczynski. Tanya is a senior staff editor at New York Times Cooking, and prior to joining the Times, Tanya was an editor at the Washington Post. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. It feels pretty incredible to be in community with all of you celebrating Eric's extraordinary new book. So with that, please join me in welcoming Eric Kim and Tanya Syczynski.
Thank you. Wow, great turnout this year. Welcome everyone. Welcome Eric. Welcome to DC. Can we hear a round of applause for Eric in DC?
Hi, thank you. It's my first time in DC ever.
That's
It's a really good city.
a little late, but you know, we'll take what we can get.
Yeah.
Thank you guys all for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about Eric's incredible best-selling cookbook, Korean American. And as Clementine mentioned, we'll have some time for questions toward the end. But I figure we can just
Let's go.
get into it. I would love to talk a little bit about your writing process throughout the book. You spent some time in the mountains, writing this book in a cabin, spending it in Atlanta with your mom. What was the process like as it kind of unfolded? How did it start and end, and what were the similarities throughout? How did it change as you started the book?
Okay. I get to finally talk about this actually, because my editor edited out like one little word, and I think we were able to imply it through context. But I went to the mountains and just like got really high. I don't know if I'm like allowed to say that, but it's just us here and all the people watching, the 2 people watching on the video stream. But she was like, I think cutting it out was a good idea, but only you guys know that. And frankly, it didn't help at all. And
I'm shocked.
I didn't do any work that whole week. I got back from that mountain trip, and that was actually when the New York Times announcement happened. They were like, 2 new staff writers, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like going through a lot of shit. And then I remember just coming home, and I had just finished the milk bread recipe, basically. And it was, that was a time in my life when everything was changing for me. A lot of things were different. I was suddenly a staff writer at a publication again. I was suddenly like barreling towards a photo shoot that we were getting ready for. And I was barreling towards like filing this. It was supposed to be 55,000 words, and I filed like 70,000 words. And
Everybody needs an editor.
Everyone needs an editor. And Tanya's actually a really great editor. So today will be a really cool conversation, I think, about maybe a little bit about craft. We can talk about writing a little bit. But I just also want to say thank you for coming. Like this, every time I'm like on the side listening to them introduce us or whatever, I'm like, who are they talking about? Who are they? Like, who are these people here for? And so it's still pretty amazing to me. And thank you for being here. And I really appreciate Bold Fork Books and everyone, Liz and Clementine and Maddie, everyone who helped make this happen. And I think this is such a nice space. It's I haven't been in a library since pre-COVID times, I think.
Same.
I feel like I'm in high school again. In my high school anyway, this is where we would go do our work. Anyway. And instead of eating lunch, or we would eat lunch in the library, and then the librarian would be like mad about that. Okay, sorry, what was the question again?
Well, actually, you mentioned craft, and maybe that's something that we can talk about pointedly.
Okay.
Like, what was the process like of physically writing down? You kind of mentioned this in the book that these recipes are heirlooms, right? You probably felt this sense of self-preservation, of familial preservation in writing them and writing down some of your mom's recipes. What was it like to actually get them down in paper in your own voice after eating them, hearing them from somebody else?
Yeah. It was a bizarre experience because, every step of it was bizarre. Writing about the things that you took for granted growing up, it's a very bizarre experience because you start to look at it from a third person point of view almost. And so I think, having those initial conversations with my family, my parents, like, remember that weird thing we ate when we were little? Like, should we make that a recipe? And then, so it starts from there, and then it's all the storytelling. Like, my dad or my mom, they tell me the first time they ate it, and then we learn, oh, that's why we eat this now. It's a really simple conversation you can have with your parents, like now, if you're lucky enough for them to still be alive. I think that's something I hope the book encourages people to do. I did it like 500 times for this. And then
Call your mom.
We picked the 96, yeah, exactly. We picked the 96 recipes, or whatever, however many recipes there are in the book to kind of finalize that. But I think it really taught me that, it gave me the confidence to talk about Korean food specifically in a way that I didn't have before, because as a child of immigrants, someone who is always straddling two nations, it really takes a long time to feel comfortable enough to talk about the cuisine of your mother's country, right? The motherland, the mother cuisine, because there's so much in my experience, I was experiencing a lot of like, people want to gatekeep these cuisines, these immigrant cuisines, because I think there's this preciousness to it, and it is precious. It's like, your parents' food. You want to have control over how it's told, the story of your parents' food. But I think once I was really in there with my kitchen, cooking everything with my mom in her kitchen, cooking with her, I learned a lot, and I got better at cooking. Like literally, my knife skills got better, and as it does happen when you just do this. When you do something for a long time and repeatedly. And so, I don't know, there were a lot of just aha moments, I think. I was like, I didn't know gochugaru burned when you had it over high heat too much. And I didn't know that, like red pepper flakes, you're always like adding it to a sizzling pan, but you can't really do that with gochugaru. Anyway, little things like that, like doenjang is really great with something sweet, and it can, create a glaze over fish. Like they're little like life lessons that I got to experience in the span of 9 months because I was cooking, all day, every day. And then it's the really cool part actually is when those recipes that you finally decided on are photographed and they're imagined by a creative team. And there's this one scene that actually didn't make it in the book because we had to cut for space, but it was a Korean barbecue kind of dinner. There are little vertical shots of it throughout. I think like the keranjim, the microwave eggs, the bulgogi, the chonggak kimchi, the ponytail hair radish kimchi. Those shots are on this like red picnic table background, and that scene was the Korean barbecue scene. And it was just a very bizarre thing because it was our dinner table at like dinner time, maybe 6 or 7 p.m., the end of the day of the long shoot. And instead of, my mom and I cooking it and having everyone come downstairs and gather around, it was my creative team. And so it was like that great moment when the family's getting dressed upstairs, trying to decide what sweater to wear. And I'm like, no, she's wearing stripes, so let's do like a solid for this person. And then we all come down and take our seats. And in that moment, I get like emotional. I told you I was gonna cry because I'm a very sappy, sentimental person. But in case you couldn't tell from the book. But
He's a Cancer, in case you needed to know.
Yeah, so, forgive me. But so I saw there wasn't room for me actually. It was 4 seats, and my mom, my dad sat. They were very important to like get down, and then my brother sat, and then his wife had to sit down. Hi, sorry, I'm embarrassing her. I have a lot of like friends in the crowd right now, which is really exciting for me. So in that moment, I was like, we're like, it was really awkward. Someone had to make a decision, like, is Eric gonna sit there or is the sister-in-law gonna sit there? And any normal person would probably be like, Eric, you should sit there. But I'm glad I didn't, because in that moment, I was just so tired. But I also just, when you're running around all the time, you don't get to appreciate what's going on. And man, I like really got to just like watch my family eating in this really creepy like facsimile of our lives, like the perfect version of our weeknight Korean barbecue. And then it was nice to just watch them posing for these pictures, and I was like, this is so cool. We get to like document this moment in our lives, but also this is how we've been eating for a very long time. This is highly stylized. It's like we don't wear, if you do Korean barbecue at home, you don't wear like sweaters. Very like noob move. But anyway, those pictures are very special to me, and I kind of like that we didn't put it in the book because it's like just for me. And I remember getting very, I had to like go upstairs when I was like looking at I had to go upstairs when I saw that dinner table because I was like, oh shit. And then I went upstairs and I was like, I like came back down and I was like, okay, where are we? And then that was the last shoot in Atlanta, and I drove back up to New York and then started my job. Yeah, that was crazy.
There's not really a moment throughout, from what I know, of your whole book process and also just like the last year for you that doesn't feel like it was probably an incredibly surreal experience.
Thank you.
And I'm picking up some vibes. But to see your kind of family's style of eating, the recipes that are closest to you laid out in a book, How did you feel when you first opened it? You probably cried, I'm sure.
No. No one tells you that you don't cry until like way later. You know, I'm a very sentimental person, but it's a story for another time. But I had a really dramatic experience at an airport, and I came back, and my dad picked me up from the airport in Atlanta, and it was New Year's Eve, and we did the countdown in the car, like on 141 on the way to the house. And the book had already arrived there a few hours earlier. So I told my mom to just like open the box, and so she's the one who got to hold it first, which I think is very appropriate. And she put a lot of work into this. So she got to look at it, and then by the time I got there, I had seen like just like, what are they called again? Galleys. Thank you. I had seen galleys of it, so it wasn't like brand new, but I think it was just not computing for me. And then my dad, it was when I got to like sit with my dad, and he was just like, whoa, it's like, and he like looked at, I watched him like look at every single page and react to everything and be like, oh, that's, because it's surreal to see your life, your not just your life, but like the whole 30 years of it or whatever, documented in art. And these artists, Jenny Huang, Tina Huang, and Beatrice Shaska, they just like did such a good job. And so my dad, it was really nice to see him reacting to the book in real time. And we had like a scotch to celebrate, and we had like one of the deepest talks we've ever had in our lives. And I just remember thinking like, wow, this is a very special moment. And so that's how I spent the first few hours of my New Year's, my 2022. And then the book came out, and I blacked out. Yeah.
You mentioned something really interesting, which is like seeing your life kind of laid out before you. What was your mom's reaction to seeing her life laid out before her, but through somebody else's perspective?
I think, in terms of the photos and the art, she loves plates and like teacups and stuff. So she has a whole cupboard of them. I think a lot of Korean moms do, but I think that's her thing. Like she loves, is it called homeware? Kitchenware? Homeware?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she got to keep a lot of the props actually, because
She deserves them.
she deserves them. She was like, unfortunately, we had to go race to New York to like finish the shoot in like a more controlled setting to have like, that's a lot of the food photos in the book. But it was like lovely to be able, she was like, but you're gonna bring those back, right? And so it's like this huge box, and I had to, take a few at a time. So like it took a few trips, and the final load is like, every time I go home now, I like bring like new plates, and she's all, and she like washes them, and then starts using them. Like our dinners have like, the plates that are in the book. So that was really exciting for her. My mom's a very just humble person. I think she's very grounded, and sorry, I can't I can't talk about my mom. Just kidding. I'm used
You
to
wrote a whole book about
I
it.
don't know. I'm like, crap, I have to like do this. I got a lot better at it though. I was like holding it back. But my mom loves, she's not able to read the words like word for word, but she gets a sense of what's going on. And I think for her, it's just pretty normal now, because I've been mining my family's history for a while. And I think for her, what's really lovely is seeing how other people are using the recipes and how people are incorporating it into their lives. So that must be very surreal for her. She lives in Atlanta, and she has a very small, tight-knit community. So I think I send her little pictures here and there, but I think for the most part, she's not that she's not interested. She's just like, this is kind of your thing. I'm going to let you, go and enjoy it. But I think once in a while, someone from church or a friend will be like, hey, I read your son's latest piece, and she's like, which piece? Like, he hasn't sent it to me. And so there's starting to become that disjuncture, but I think it's not a big deal.
We should talk a bit about the actual recipes too.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm curious, we were kind of talking about it a bit upstairs, but there's always, for recipe developers, I think you have an idea of what might hit. Sometimes it doesn't. You might think that something won't hit, and it does. I'd be curious to know what recipes throughout the book kind of fit those buckets. Like, what feels really underrated that everybody in this room should go home and cook immediately? What feels like maybe the obvious slam dunk?
Okay,
Thoughts?
so I won't take credit for this. I guess I did say it in an interview, but on Eater, Dana Evans, lovely reporter, she interviewed me for like 15 minutes or something. I don't remember what I hadn't remembered. I didn't even remember what I said. And then the piece came out. And I was like, oh, you did such a good job. But I think in the piece I talked about how, when I moved to New York to become a pop star, or like I wanted to be a singer. I had like a guitar, and I was talking to Allison over here, one of my friends. I was like, are you a songwriter? Because I think when you're a creative type or a writer, I think I've started to realize that it almost doesn't matter what form it is. Like you always sort of just find a different thing. I wrote poetry at one point, and then she was like, no, not since high school. I was like, oh, well, that's when I was trying to be a pop star. So I was trying to be the next Michelle Branch, and so I always, I had like moving to New York was about getting a record deal, not like becoming a writer, and then but still that's always in my mind. I'm really interested in the marketing side of everything. So when the book came out, I knew that the milk bread would be something that maybe would become a thing, but I just didn't realize how many people would bake it. I didn't know how many people would actually bake it, because it's like a commitment, and that was really exciting to know that it was not a risk or anything, but I just didn't know that it would become like that. And then I had like number 2 and 3 and 4, which were the second single is always like more of like a bop, and so I thought sorry, so I thought maybe the Gochujara shrimp and grits and the what is it, the smashed potatoes with roasted seaweed sour cream dip, I thought those would be head to head, and I think they are now. But when I first announced, like, I had this cooking class and I was like, vote on these 3, and the third option was a black sesame rice cake. The rice cake was by far like the most popular, and so I didn't know that would become a thing. And it's weird for me because I actually just have never considered myself a baking like developer or like a sweets person in terms of recipe development. So that was a nice surprise. And then the Gochujara shrimp and grits and the potatoes, they're kind of, a lot of people are making them now, and they're sort of definitely like singles 3 and 4. But then, you have your all too well 10-minute version. And I think for me, that is, that's probably, there is this one recipe in there that doesn't have a photo. And I think when you look at cookbooks that don't have recipes that don't have photos, you always want to know like why they don't have photos. And the reason's usually just really simple. It's like, that's a really brown dish. Like, maybe and I worked really closely with my photographer, and I let her basically make a lot of decisions. Like, I was like, I trust you, and I want you to tell the visual story of this to Jenny Huang. And so she was like, no, we're not shooting the curry rice because, it's brown and it's okay. And I actually wasn't even sure if I was going to include it because we had to cut a lot of recipes. And so, but then I added it back in because that recipe was just dinner. It was like dinner one night. I've made it in an Instant Pot a lot, but what I like to do with the curry bricks is to really add lots of vegetables. And so I add so much spinach that it almost turns into like a saag paneer situation. Like, it's that kind of like spinach rich gravy, but then eggplant is in there, and that really melts into it, and that becomes the texture of it. It's like becomes baba ganoush, like it's still like Japanese curry, but it's like, and then there's a lotus root in there, which is super random, and lots of carrots because I love carrots and curry rice. Anyway, this is just a curry, but it's like it's the dish that my family was like, oh yeah, like, this is a great recipe. What chapter is this going to be in? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I was just feeding us, and I think that's really special. I think those in my job now, the best recipes, the most successful ones, like the sheeppan bibimbap, those are actually the ones that just came out of my dinner trying to feed people because it came out of real life. And then I go to my editor, I'm like, oh, I just did this really cool thing. Should we do it? And then we'll jump on it. And so I love recipes that happen organically like that, because sometimes you are trying to make something up, but the best food is the kind that you're not trying with. So, yeah.
So it's up to everybody to go home, make the curry rice, take a photo of it since the photo doesn't exist in the book, and then tag Eric on it. on it on Instagram.
And then
right?
I'll be like, why is everyone making this curry rice? But yeah, that's the one that people might not think to make because there's no picture, but it is a very special recipe and really useful. I have a pint of it in my freezer. I like always have it.
This is probably a silly question. How much did the bread grow through the development process? Like, did it just keep getting taller?
I have no idea what you're talking about. You know, you can actually go to my Instagram and look at the highlights. There's a little bread emoji, and that shows you from beginning to end, like the process. It started off as like, you know, like started off like a six pack, like abs, and then I kind of noticed I was like, oh, it looks like a cup, like 3 butts, and then I was like, or abs or whatever, and then so I changed it to like 3. Like milk bread is usually it's often like 3 folded kind of rolls, and then I got to a point where I just tried 2 because I was lazy, and then that one turned out the funniest, and so I just stuck with it. And then I went to the mountains, and
We all know how that went.
and then I came back and I made it again and again and again. And you know, there's a lot of I feel like every opportunity I have, I try to say this, but I like to use a Pullman loaf pan. I didn't get to like say this out loud. The Pullman loaf pan is like straighter sides, and it kind of creates like a body that's a little more like this, and so that means the mushroom is a little. But the proofing times are exactly the same as like a 9x5 loaf pan, which does this. Sorry, that's very esoteric, whatever, but it's a secret that only you guys know now. But I just really wanted it to be a huge butt because also that was the sign that it would bake up really nicely. Because if you don't proof it enough, it's it can be like a little dense, which is fine. It still tastes good, but yeah, it's important to get it to that stage.
This is not necessarily about Korean American, but it is about your writing process. Let's talk about Timmy Snacks. Talk about the genesis of Timmy Snacks. For those who are uninitiated, Eric is married to Timothée Chalamet, the actor, in his own mind. And he writes these beautiful odes to what he wants to cook for Timothée Chalamet. And I feel like they have evolved in terms of your voice, in terms of their chaos. And I just like,
Yeah.
open up your brain a little bit and talk about where that came from.
Okay, so let's see. Where do I start? I was in the. It was like it must have been like a couple months into the pandemic, and I haven't really said this out loud much because it was a very like hard time in all of our lives, but I had just been laid off, and so I was unemployed, and I also had just got a book deal. So it was a very strange moment in my life, and I'm so grateful for it because everything happened after that. Like being set free from a company meant that I could say whatever the hell I wanted. So I was like, let's get. I was just like, now I can finally just do whatever the hell I want. So I you know, and I, you know, because I've always been employed, and which I'm so grateful for. I love my job, which I do with Tanya. She literally just published my essay or my latest piece for the Times yesterday. Like, but I just really, I think I was also just bored. So it was at night. I had just made mac and cheese for myself. Took a picture of it, and I don't know. It was before bed. And it took me like 15 minutes. I wrote maybe 2 or 3 sentences. It wasn't like as elaborate as they are now. But I just wrote, I don't know, like I wrote midnight snack for Timothée Chalamet if I were his wife. And then it was like, whatever, a description of the stovetop mac and cheese I had made. Really good, by the way. It's the very first picture if you click that hashtag Timmy Snacks. And then it just got like it got a nice response. People like chuckled and they liked it, and so the next one I made even more ridiculous. It was like Brie, and I remember that's the one where I kind of leaned into it. I wrote like 2 or 3 more sentences, and I really I started to fill out the character. I was like, who is this wife character? And then the response was good again, and so like it was just like nicotine. I was like, and so I started to do it more regularly, and then it was just this thing I did because I didn't have a job and I was just writing a book. And I'm just kidding. I had like a lot of free time, but also I was so depressed. Like we were all so. I think it was a really hard time in a lot of people's lives, and it was nice to work on humor, and I'd always wanted to practice humor writing. So it was I always wanted to practice humor writing, but it really was a fun exercise because it was like I would only give myself from 10 o'clock to 10:30. I was like, I have to post it. Like the punctuation was all messed up and weird, and Instagram is in a way so that like I used to write poetry, so it's like it felt like it kind of felt like a poem, and it was fun. Later in the series, there are like 21 now. So I did it for 21 weeks and I stopped, but because the Times started interviewing me, and I just like wanted to. Anyway, I think it also really helped people. I think that was the reaction that was the most joyful, and it made people laugh. Made some people really horny, and that's like not really what I wanted. But obviously, it was like it was a parody, but it was also. Timothy Chalamet is like so hot, so I think people needed something like that maybe, and I think I don't know, that's none of my business, but like I think I just wanted to have fun, and I really enjoyed writing those because it was just truly an opportunity to practice writing and to kind of not take things so seriously, and it was really fun, and then it was the life after that just like. I only did it for 21 weeks. I guess that's a long time. That's like almost half a year. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just
A long time.
yeah, but then it was after that where that's the thing that people just kept associating me with and tagging me in any Timmy meme or Timmy thing and I love that. I appreciate that because I'm like, my whole saved tab in Instagram is just like all Timmy pictures, and because I was always fascinated by this young man, and I won't get too much into this, but the reason is because it was it was this nice when Call Me by Your Name came out, that like changed my life, I think.
Have you heard from his people? Have you gotten a C&D?
So no C&D yet, but the one part of the story that's interesting is I'm hoping it like progresses, but one of my editors at Savor magazine at the time where I was editing, she was neighbors with the agent, and so she sent that agent my stories. Well, they're like Instagram links, and then I know that the agent sent it to me, and no response. Not that I was expecting one, but and I was, but a part of me really wants to write about that whole phenomenon, like this weird part of my life where like now people associate me with Timothy Chalamet, which I'm okay with because I've always really admired the way he chose roles, and I like his fashion, but I think also it's that it's also just that it's nice to get to be like a thirsty little hoe like on Instagram. Life is short. It's like everyone takes things so seriously. I'm just like, it's nice to get to like fuck around sometimes.
Life is short. Shoot your shot in the Instagram captions. You don't even need to go into the DMs.
Yeah.
Make it public.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have a few more minutes left before we want to open things up for questions. So we can pivot back to the book briefly. You write really beautifully about the challenges of writing about authenticity and what that means as a developer and what that means as a Korean American and really anybody from an immigrant household who might have that experience of trying to maintain something that feels quote unquote authentic.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how that frame of thinking like evolved during the cookbook process.
Ooh, yeah. I read a Lagaya Michon's column, the latest one in Eat, in the New York Times Magazine, and there's a line where her source, it's like a Jamaican fish recipe, and the source says, Jamaicans don't come at me, and that line is something that you could like search like on Twitter, don't come at me, and I don't know, food or whatever, however you search things on Twitter, but I think that phrase has really come up a lot lately because now the children of these immigrants have grown up and are writers, and we're like sharing these dishes, and then there are other children of immigrants being like, my mom doesn't do it like that, and they just like attack you. And the critics who are the harshest are your own community, and it's this really vicious thing. I remember, I think Priya won't mind me saying this, but like I called her once because someone was like really critical of this one piece I wrote about Korean food, and I was like, I didn't know this was such an issue, and I was very naive, and she was like, welcome to the club. And that's why it's like, because it's something that's I think people, and I think coming at it from a place of compassion is really important. I think that's something that I started to realize, like, oh, there's a reason why we think like this. There's a scarcity mindset in food media. There's only one spot for that type of cuisine, or like, you know, they see a kimchi piece in the Times and they're like, oh shit, now I can't write a kimchi piece, and it's so not true. And but I think because of the way white supremacy has, like, you know, really taken a hold of food media and just media in general, I think it took cooking through the book, gaining some, you know, authority, also letting that go, just kind of like being like, I'm not their mom. I'm not all of Korean Americans' mother. Like, I'm not Mangchi. But I mean, just kidding. Even she's not responsible for that. No one should be responsible for that. And I think it came from, at first I had a lot of fear about it, but then I'm really grateful that, I mean, it took a while, it took many years to like get to a place where I was like, you know, I do have an opinion about Korean food. I do have something to say. And the way you say it is very important. We spend so much time editing these 100-word head notes on top of a recipe. That's like not that much room, but it's enough room to say, this is inspired by this dish, but this dish, and then this dish, but I'm doing this because this, and this. And that, I think once I gained more of a confidence in Korean cooking, but also in writing and in reporting, I felt like I could be airtight. And it sucks that we have to be airtight to not be attacked by our own people, but it started to become a point of contention for me, or a point of like, I get very fiery whenever I talk about this, and I can go on forever, so I won't. But that part of the book I wrote at the very end. I sent the book out to Nigella freaking Lawson and like Minjin Lee, and like the book, that part wasn't finished yet, and I was like, oh my god, but that's how the timeline works and stuff. But so that's the part that I did at the very end. Did someone say something? No, never. Sorry. Anyway, that part was, I think I had to go through all of that before I wrote that part, and before I could really arrive at the thesis of the book. And that's why I'm really grateful for the way it's laid out. It starts when I'm 17 and it ends when I'm 30, and it takes that long and much longer, I think, to like really gain that confidence to be like, I am also Korean. This is also Korean. But then on the other hand, there's also this other thing, which is white food media. And so my argument is always Korean food is American food. So there are a lot of politics here, and I'm glad I was able to get that into a succinct, I don't know, 5 paragraphs or whatever that essay is. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thesis to a book, I have to say.
Thanks.
Are we ready for questions? Shall we open up the floodgates? All right.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks so much for
We
being
can
here, by the way.
Yes, raise your hand and we will bring you a mic. We got one over here.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Sorry about that. Oh yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Hi.
Hi. So I found you on YouTube and through your quick kimchi recipe, and I really liked it. Thought it was charming, so I kept watching your videos. So I was just wondering what some of your favorite YouTube channels are right now. And then the second question is, what's pop star Eric's favorite karaoke song?
Good questions.
Yeah. More questions like that.
Fun questions to answer. Well, first of all, my song is usually Lady Marmalade, because Lil Kim and Pink and the Christina Aguilera version, because I can, and Maya, of course, because I can really do that rap. And then, anyway, and I also, in terms of YouTube channels, Emmy Makes is someone I've been watching for years. And then recently she made the milk bread, and it was just so lovely to, I mean, man, she's like, you know, legacy YouTube like kind of star. And I actually use YouTube for ASMR. I like watching ASMR videos. oh God, I don't even know their names though. One of them's called ASMR Hall Pass, I think. He's just like this adorable kid who like does really aggressive like ASMR sounds. It's like really loud. And I was like, I must be a little desensitized to ASMR. I've been listening to it since 2012. So I think having this person who's just really intense just puts me right to sleep. So that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but
We've slowly started to get Eric to do ASMR videos on the New York Times Cooking TikTok. So a little
We'll see.
dabbling there.
we'll see where it
Yeah.
lands.
Other questions? Don't be shy. We got one over here. Amazing.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
What is the recipe that didn't make it into the book that you went back and forth on?
Whew, good question. There's a cheesy tteokbokki, and it has what does it have? It has like it's a rapoki, so it's ramen noodles in that gochujang sauce and the rice cakes, and it's really good, but it just wasn't finished yet. It was really rushed, and I didn't have time, and I didn't have space. So, and it was a really long recipe. So, I actually got to rework it, and it'll show up someday soon. But actually, yeah, it's now it's like the newer like I've been able to refine it. Hi. Oh, sorry. It was really exciting to see my friends. Yeah, so I got to refine that, and you know, I think there was a lot of pressure to put out a tteokbokki recipe. It's like, oh God, like people really like that SH. You know, it's like, so I just really felt that it wasn't ready for the public yet, and I didn't want to let anyone down. So we held it back, which I'm really glad we did. Cutting recipes is actually a great thing. Like I at first they were like my darlings, but the point is of your darlings is you're supposed to kill them. Or sorry, as they say in writing, not your actual babies. Don't kill your babies. But yeah. Thanks for that question.
Other questions? Oh, we have a hand over here in the middle.
Sorry. Thank you. I feel like you have such a distinctive writing voice in your columns, and so I was wondering, writers that you've appreciated recently or in the past, and yeah, who
Thank you.
inspires you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I've been really into Brian Washington and Lagai Michon. I'm not just saying that because they're fellow columnists, but like they joined the EAT rotation recently, and that was just like a dream to me. The story is actually Emily just slacked me one day a long time ago, and she was like, "Do you have Brian Washington's email?" I was like, "No, I can get it for you." And then turned out it's because she wanted to ask him to join like the column, and it's lovely to read people who write like that, to see them like write about food, because food writing and food media has become such a trope, and it's so people write in this echo chamber, and they write in a specific copyrighty way, and I think that works for a lot of things, but it's nice to have like a novelist write about food, to have a cultural critic write about food. It's nice to have like people outside of food write about food, and obviously they're not outside of food anymore, but I think those two are people I really look to for prose style, and I really love Shane Mitchell's writing. She's a friend of mine, but she writes these epics for the Bitter Southerner, and her work is, she always gets a Beard Award every year. Like it's so good, and she's just really good at her prose. And I really like Gia Tolentino's Trick Mirror. I think it's you know, it has its critics, but I really like the maximalist quality of that memoir, because it's using the essay form for cultural criticism. I think people think that the personal essay is supposed to be about the author, but I actually think the best personal essay is not about the I at all. It's about like, you know, the world at large. So that's something that I really look towards, because I'm sort of like working on some essays right now. But thank you for that question. I always love that question.
Got one up here and one back there.
Thanks. Yeah.
Go furring.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Question for you. You've kind of talked a little bit about this, but can you talk a little bit about your thoughts, feelings, etc., about writing a cookbook versus your columns, your essays, etc., and just how that might be different?
Yeah, I think there's the physical part of it. It's like manual labor. Obviously it is, but I was on my feet all day, every day for like a whole year. That was really hard for me. I've never worked in a kitchen professionally. I made salads for a pizza joint in like Atlanta, but like, yeah. I think for me, it was the realizing that you only have a certain amount of space. And now I work at a paper or write for the paper's magazine. So the word count is like, it's still like 800 words though. That's like a lot of space. And with the book, I just had to think much in terms of concision. Of course, there are moments, and then deciding which moments that you get to like really go off. And it's like, no, I want all of this to be here still. And so I think it has to do with length. And with the cookbook, I just said that like I just talked about concision, but it's like a series of concise stories, right? And I've never had that much room. Sorry, that was like a horribly phrased. Like I just told you that. Anyway, my point though is I did have about 65,000 words to say whatever the hell I wanted, but it was about how to use that space. And having that much freedom was so anxiety inducing because the column is really lovely. It's like, oh, I only have 800 words. So it's a very finite thing. And writing in that space is actually, for someone like me who needs the pressure and who needs the parameters and the assignment, like that really works for me. I can play in that that sandbox. But with the book, there was no sandbox. It was like, you have 65,000 words. Well, I had 50,000 and I just ended up filing more. But it was cool to see the writing that came out in that way. It came out very differently. Just came out very like, I've never written like that. And I think that's why I'm so proud of some of the essays that stayed in this book because I've never had that much room to think about like literal space. And so, I mean, it's a pretty thick book. It's like 288 pages. The recipes, you have to be concise, but it's nice to know that you have all the space in the world to say exactly what you want to say. And there's a lot of anxiety with that, but there's also a lot of freedom. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you for that question.
There was a question over here. No? Yes, over there.
These are great questions.
Hello.
Hi.
So you mentioned how you got your book deal kind of at this really weird time kind of for society in general. I'm curious if you had any like trouble kind of making a piece of art at a time when there was so much like physical, tangible tragedy, and if so, like what tactics you used to kind of focus in and find meaning in the midst of that.
Man,
Lovely question.
that's a really good question. She's like, I'm glad I don't have to answer that. No, thank you for that question. Just for context, while working on the book after hours, I was also like applying to this job and then doing the job. And the day of election results, I was refreshing the New York Times homepage while doing my edit test for that job. And if you've ever done an edit test for like an editorial job, they're pretty stressful. And I just can't believe that like I made it all happen. But every day was like that. It's like, I'm going to make this happen somehow before like 12 a.m. But, I think the writing in the book is very much influenced by the tragedy. And I think this sense of, that life is precious, and it's kind of cheesy, but the whole feast chapter is about death. And even before the pandemic, I had lost a lot of people in my life. And so I think it was already on my mind, and then to have it like times 10 like that was, and specifically I was thinking about the mortality of my parents. I was like worried about their health, and they're a little older. So I think it was actually, it wasn't pleasant, but I think it was all necessary to get kind of arrive at the conclusions that I did arrive at in the book. And there were so many weird moments that happened to me throughout that year, I mean, to all of us. And I didn't go out and, I didn't like write about those things specifically, but I think it fueled the tone of the book and the seriousness of everything. And, 2020 in food media was very much influenced by, George Floyd. And so that was all front of mind. I think that's why every win was like so big. Every win just felt so much bigger because of what was going on. And And so that's usually what I say when something horrible happens. You're just like, when you have a win after that, or when something good does happen after a tragedy, then you feel it more. And I think maybe that's what life is about, and that's how you get through things. But thank you for asking that question.
Got one back here. Ooh, couple up front. One over there. Some over there. I feel like an auctioneer.
Hi, Eric. I've been a big fan. I'm half Korean, and I end up relying on Mangchi a lot because my mom doesn't give me the exact measurements for things just to get things just right. So I was just wondering, how did you pry recipes out of your mom, or how did you figure out how to cook Korean food by yourself
I had that on my notes.
as an adult?
Oh my God. How long do you have? No, I think we had like a what is it called? We had a period where we were figuring out how to work together because, she was a liar like all the time. And I should have known this, but as a reporter, your source, like the whole point of interviewing a source is actually just to get them to stop lying. And so, she would try to make her dishes in like much more fanciful ways, and I'd be like, no, like you don't have to. I think she was cooking with an audience, and it was just cute it was kind of cute actually. It was just like doing these little flourishes, and we were eating it and be like, it's like the stuff that you've been cooking your whole life, like that's what's really good. And so we had a lot of trial and error, and I think there was a point where it was nice to be able to let her just be herself and let her cook, and then I would just write things down. And we got to a place where I think she became a recipe developer through this process in the way that I became like a Korean cook. Like she was able to, she was like this much, and like she was like, and then she started to realize like this is 1 tablespoon, this is 1 teaspoon, and that was kind of a cool thing. And so now she can write down her recipes whenever she wants, like whenever, and she is the cook in her life. Like the people around her know her as the cook. Like she's very good at cooking, and that seems like obvious, but not all adults are good at cooking, and that's like this thing you realize that later in life. And she, so she's known for her cooking, and I think the reason some of us become recipe developers is because then you can communicate your cooking, and being able to communicate with language is something that's really important to me. It's always been really important to me, and recipes are just one form in which I'm able to do that. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Hi, Eric. Congratulations. If you could host a dream dinner party for anyone in the world, dead or alive, 3 people, who would you invite and what would you cook for them?
Well, okay. So obviously I would have to invite Timothy Chalamet because you said dinner, right? It's impossible to get in contact with him. I don't know why. I mean, any
Carrier pigeon.
Carrier pigeon. Anytime work asks, like, I haven't tried that hard, I'll be honest. But I think
You gotta put PR on it.
yeah, it's put PR on it. Anyway, anytime work asks, like, is there anyone you'd like to cook with for this like thing that we're doing? I'm like, I always say Timothy Chalamet. I'll try to make it happen with my connections, but I have no connections. So I'm not gonna say Nigella Lawson because I think I'd be terrified to cook for her, but I think she would really appreciate the food. So she's like, if I didn't have to attend the party and I just cooked it, then Nigella. If I was a caterer for it, yeah. And then because I would love to see Nigella and Timmy like interacting. It'd be so cute. Your face. And then third person. Oh, my mom's mom probably. Like I've never met her, and I always have this image in my mind of who this person is. Like this wonderful cook who taught my mom how to be like the person she is. I've never met this person, so I would like to meet her. I heard great things about her, and she was a good cook. So
Got a few up here, some over there. Oh, one over there. Yes, one back there first.
Hi, Eric. It's Rosa.
Back
Back here. Back here.
Oh,
in the
sorry.
back.
Hi.
I'm here with
Hi.
Brooklyn.
Oh my God. Yeah. Hi.
So I just wanted to ask, kind of going off of your mom's, the question about your mom, since we know her. And I'm sure there are challenges that you had with her. And how did you honor her and her recipe versus trying to work with her? And, Korean moms are very opinionated. So how did you have your own take with the recipe when you work with her versus trying to honor her at the same time?
So good to see you guys. They're both from Atlanta, and her mom. What?
Shout out.
Shout out. Not to blow your spot, but her mom was my Korean school kindergarten teacher, I think. I thought about that recently. I was like seeing a picture of her. I was like, that was my kindergarten teacher. Anyway, so that's cool. I think there was a moment where I really had to make a decision about how close to her recipe to go. And because, my mom and I were always thinking about the reader. I think the reader is the most important person in a process like this. And, I always use this example because it's the easiest way to explain it, but meshilchong, which is a green plum syrup in the book, it's the first ingredient listed in that pantry section. She kept reaching for that to sweeten her food. And, I was always like, let's do granulated sugar because everyone has that. But every time we made the granulated sugar version, it just didn't taste as good. And because the meshilchong provided fruitiness and it had this like sharper sweetness that was much more complex, much more nuanced. And I was like, I need to not whitewash my mother. So I was like, but also I think it's really interesting. Meshilchong became this like ingredient that Korean home cooks started using. I think mostly out of like consciousness of health, and I think that fruitiness is really important in Korean food, and it's what makes her kimchi really good. With that said, I did make kimchi recently with just sugar because that's how we used to do it before the meshilchong era. But I was really proud to put a version of that recipe in the Times because it got a lot of people to care about meshilchong and to look for it. And I think that's how we move the needle. It's like, let's stop trying to change the way people cook and let's just document it. Because I think that was a lesson for me to open myself up to her cooking and not be like, well, I would do it like this, because it doesn't matter what I would do. It's like, but it was when we met in the middle that it was the loveliest, I think. And, she always had to approve, though. So I think it was good that she was really difficult to work with. I'm just kidding. She was fine. I think it was good that we were both really harsh critics, or we had a high standard for everything. So, I won some battles, she won some battles. It was like a thing. Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions. I have one here.
There's one up here too.
Hi, thank you. Oh, yeah. Hi, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of this with us. But to that point of what you were saying to her before, I would be really interested to know what your thoughts are on food actually being authentic in general, given that you actually mentioned that you wanted your book to be equally Korean and equally American, and how everything is pretty much mixed, especially in the United States. But even developing your recipes for the book, how did you keep that authenticity bar while at the same time adjusting it to the audience that you're catering to?
Yeah, I think, there was a point in the book writing process where I was talking to a lot of other food writers who were phrasing it like this, like, is it authentic to you? And Kate Chun, NYT cooking contributor, Yewande Komalafe, these 2 women who are just really prolific and well-respected in the industry. And I loved hearing it phrased like that. It's so gentle, but it's like, yeah, authentic to whom? And for me, I realized that word, I just want to get rid of it. And I think authentic doesn't mean anything to me, or authenticity doesn't mean anything to me unless it's followed by to someone. And that's what's important, because I think I just had this realization that Koreanness my whole life was used as a weapon. It was like, I'm more Korean than you, and people would call me a twinkie. I always mix the two because, but yeah, a Twinkie is yellow on the outside and white on the inside. It's like, oh, that's the biggest insult. Like, you're not full, whatever. What's full? Like, you're not full pound cake or whatever. And I'm sure that's another word for something. Sorry.
I gotta flush that out a little bit. That needs an edit.
Anyway, so I think I got to a place where I felt really confident in saying finally, oh, your mom doesn't do it like this? Well, F your mom. Like, I just don't, I'm not your mom. And stop putting that bar for me. Like, I'm not even close to being your mother, and that's okay. I think your mother probably cooks very well, but like, I do it differently because I'm not your mother. So I think that's, anytime someone tries to tell you that, just say, well, I'm not your mother. I think that's the answer. Yeah.
We had
It was a lot spicier than I meant to do.
We had one up here, and I think that is our Last one? Are we after this? Do you have a mic?
And feel free to ask me at the meet and greet.
I don't know. Right over here.
I can also repeat your question. Okay.
Yeah, you can also just shout it at us. Oops, shit.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Love your work. So as a fellow Korean American, I think for me, it's been really interesting to see Korean food and culture kind of enter the mainstream in a way that was kind of unimaginable for me, like growing up. So I guess I was wondering, what are kind of your thoughts on like why Korean food has been able to sort of like break through in a way, and whether the fact that Korean food is now a little bit more mainstream, do you think that'll affect how people cook Korean food, like especially Korean Americans?
Thank you for that question. That's a good question because I think a lot of people would answer that like, I don't believe in mainstream and I'm doing this for me. But I write for the New York Times, so I'm like very aware. And also, I don't want to take that for granted. When the kamja salad went up, it was a kamja salad for a panchan story I wrote for the Times. And I got a DM from someone, I'll always remember this. They were like, this made me cry. I was like, because it's so beautiful. It's like, I know how that feels to not see yourself on the screen on a page, like your whole life. And then suddenly, it's sort of like that moment, this is gonna sound like silly, but I love the moment in Harry Potter, sorry. I love the moment in Harry Potter when Harry Potter 3, he realizes that it's not his father across the lake, that he's supposed that that conjures the Patronus that saves everyone. He like travels back in time and he realizes, oh, I have to do it. And then he like steps up and then performs this great piece of magic. I'm not equating myself to that, but but I'm saying there's a moment in a lot of our lives, I think, children of immigrants, we like grow up and then we're like, oh, what am I waiting for? Like I need to do it myself. And that's a good feeling. And it's a very I don't take it for granted because it took a lot to get here. I think there's so much racism in food media and as we know, and I think getting to a place where you can start the word representation is complicated, and I don't like to say that I'm representing anyone, but I think it's about like seeing yourself on the screen. It's actually like DMs from non-Koreans too. Like I get a lot of emails from a lot of people who are like from various immigrant backgrounds who are like, this meant a lot to me for this reason. And I think just seeing anyone kind of be their true selves on the page, on the screen. I'm personally seeing it a lot in cinema right now and TV, and it's really liberating. We have the Bone Yangs and the Joel Kim boosters, and Karen Chi is a lovely comedy writer on the Seth Meyers show. I think it means everything to me. I think that's really important. And what I really want to do though is make sure that there are a lot of us like out there writing about this. Like I don't think there should ever be one person who's like doing it, and that's the thing that I want to make sure happens because I think people think that tokenism is representation, but they're just not the same thing. So yeah. Thanks for that question.
I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much to the library, to Tanya, and to Eric. And thank you all for being here. Can I get a round of applause?
Thank you so much.
So if you give me 1 minute, I'm going to whisk them away and take them out there. And then everyone that's leaving, thank you so much for coming. We hope to see you at another Bold Fork event. And if you're staying for the meet and greet, if you just stay seated, we'll kind of release you and we'll get everyone to meet Eric and out of here in good time. So thank you.
We're being whisked, but I got it.